dah habis practice. Stand by. So they have 5 laps of only 5 laps for qualifying.
Yeah.
Hi Matt.
Yeah. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the pre-season testing session for the Adrenaline Impact Malaysia iRacing Championship Season 2. We're here at Okayama Circuit for a little sneak preview. These guys are going to go out there. They have 10 minutes to do a maximum of 5 laps. We see there Azil Nazli going out in a brand new car for the new season, the front-wheel drive IMSA spec Kia, and it's a Kia Optima, I believe. 375 brake horsepower going through the front wheels with a 6-speed sequential transmission. A car built for endurance racing, but also the basis, one of the cars that was used as the basis for the TCR regulations. So they based the regulations on a hybrid of this particular car, which runs in SCCA GT4 and IMSA's B-spec class, or C-spec class, I believe. And also the Seat Leon Cupra. So very, very high horsepower front-wheel drive cars. Obviously, the current modern-day TCR cars have a bit more aero, but it'll be nevertheless very interesting to see how the drivers get on with driving these very high horsepower front-wheel drive cars around the circuits that we have lined up over the course of the next season. Some special events as well coming up, one of which we will introduce later on during the broadcast. But definitely is going to be a very exciting little run through here. So just to run through the race format, we have 10 minutes for qualifying. In that 10 minutes you are limited to 5 laps total of qualifying. Once you get out of there, you will then head on over to a 2-heat race for this particular practice session. Not to give away too much about the format that we're going to be going for in the next season, but we'll have the first heat and then a feature race. The first heat will set the grid for the feature race, and this qualifying session will set the grid for heat 1. So they're going down the back stretch here, Azra and Leslie. As you can see, the car's quite a bit quicker under acceleration, easily getting up past 210 kilometers an hour before coming into the braking zone. The car is very quick in the straight line, but it's a real challenge to try and get the car into the corners nice and effectively. So as you can see there, Azra really pushing hard to try and get the car around here. Some of these drivers perhaps would be a little bit more used to this layout. You know, Michael Hafiz and Azra Nazli and a few other of the drivers from the real world of motorsports that we have in the championship, a little bit more used to driving front-wheel drive touring cars. It's sort of the bread and butter form of racing here in Malaysia. The big touring car championships have always been about front-wheel drive cars here. As you can see there, Kelvin Hard doing a very respectable 1 minute 36 second lap time, followed by Irshad and Saiful. Irshad, I believe, is joining us for the first or second time, but he will be joining us for season 2. So a very special warm welcome to Tengku Irshad for the next season. Meanwhile, Saiful Arifin is driving a Toda branded machinery. That's quite interesting indeed. We have quite a few drivers changing teams for next season, so that's going to be interesting to look out there. Some new liveries on these cars as well. Lots of space for any advertising and sponsorship opportunities available coming through to the next weekend, or through the next race week. So that's going to be very interesting indeed to look out for during the next season of the Adrenaline Impact iRacing Malaysia Championship.
I think this is lone qualifying, so you won't see any other cars. That's why.
Yep, this is single car qualifying, so much like in America with the oval racing, you basically have a limited amount of laps and you are alone out there on the track, so it's one at a time. Although, of course, in iRacing, to speed things up a little bit, it's simulated one single car qualifying, so all these drivers are out at the same time but on empty racetracks. And we're just trying that out just to see how it would work for us in the future. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, we just want to have a quick special thanks to our sponsors for AIMC so far. They've been absolutely fantastic in supporting the championship all throughout. We have Works Engineering, Lucas Oil, Oregon Engineering, Stream.my, Simology, Pico Media, Sim Racing Enthusiasts, Dot Motorsports, and Interformula. So special thanks to those guys, and hopefully we'll see yet more action up ahead. Dirty Air. Now that looks to me like a brand new livery for Shopee Inside.
Kind of
I like the
funky.
fact that I like the fact that just below Dirty Air it says that Truck Racer. It's not a truck, it's a truck. Small difference in pronunciation, big difference in what you're talking about. But it looks like we have quite a few teams, new teams coming in for next season. The registrations, I believe, are still open.
Yeah, open
Wanna
until
say?
the 30th. We have 40 more days to register.
So right up to the end of July, the 30th of July is the deadline to enter the second season of the Adrenaline Impact iRacing Malaysia Championship, AIMC. And we have a new car and we have a couple of races in a new format as well. Muhammad Muhaimin there in the Toyota Motorsports car. Nice to see the liveries being updated and changed. Definitely, a lot of the teams right now have very, very strong levels of professionalism right now coming into the championship. So Saiful Arifin is now currently on pole position, followed by Jasmine Jali, Tuku Irshad, the Shopian Said, Afizul Jai, Calvin Ha, Muhammad Muhaimin, Azril Nazli, Muhammad Khalif, and Malvindajit Singh. So that is our top 10 at the moment. I believe there are a few cars still out there. Faisal Alang is tearing off across the start-finish straight. He'll probably set a time in 11th position. He'll want to try and improve that ever so slightly. I believe he might be cruising around there in a stock livery. Zainul Hazim there. Now he's showing off that fantastic Dante's livery, another sponsor that's been wrangled for one of the teams during the for season 2. So nice to see the teams looking out and gaining sponsorship and gaining recognition for what they do. I know two or three of you guys might be interested in what I'm drinking. We had this discussion on the SRE forum quite a few days ago. Today it's Coca-Cola without the calories.
It's still there's still calories, right? But it's quite minimal.
Well, I think fairly minimal.
No such thing
Not
as
exactly.
0-calorie Coke.
There's no such thing as zero calorie anything. If it's got a label on it, there are probably some in there somewhere. Mind you, I don't drink it for the fact. I'm not one of those Diet Coke guys. If anyone of you have seen my orders at McDonald's, you trust me, Diet Coke isn't going to help anything. But it does take the edge off the thirst. That's the main thing. Muhammad Khalif there in that fantastic Hot Wheels car. Looked so good you could sell that in the shops. In fact, I think I might have one. But yeah. So these cars are running on the real life cars, I believe, originally ran on BF Goodrich tyres, but switched to Pirelli as part of the IMSA rules package. and very, very quick car indeed. Trying to remember what the class is called nowadays, but I believe it's SD4. Although, if you do know, do leave us a comment down below. And while you're there, hit that like button and share it with your friends and see if they can get themselves hyped up for the upcoming season of the Adrenaline Impact Malaysia Championship. Of course, not forgetting the season finale that's coming up this Sunday. We're also going to have some coverage on Friday. It's going to be very, very exciting stuff. The championship is still wide open, so we're going to see some very, very close racing around Charlotte Roval. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. But for now, we're going to look at the practice race. Rolling start, I
The
believe.
first race is a rolling start. Both races, there are the two heats today, and first heat is featuring all of them, and same goes to the second heat. And the second heat with the difference of grid positions, they're inverted.
Alrighty, so the first heat is going. The second heat, or the feature race, rather, is going to be a reverse grid from the results from heat 1. So that's going to be very interesting indeed to watch out for. For those of you wondering how heat racing works in iRacing, as the guys are about to head off from the grid, basically comes from short track racing in America, where you can't fit all 60 or 70 entries. You have different heats. Cars 1 to 20 will be in one heat, cars 21 to 29 will be in a second heat, and so on and so forth. And the quickest guys from each heat race head off into the feature. So it's a format that means that you can enter 70 or 80 cars on a quarter-mile oval, and because the racing is nice and short and sharp, you get a lot of exciting action. But right now we just have a double header format. Heat 1 is going to be just the standard quickest car on pole position. That's Saiful Arifin. Jasmine Jelly is right next to him, and Irshad is in third, followed by Shopian, Jai, and Calvin Ha. As we wait for the lights to go green, no passing until the start-finish line, and away we go. So the grid has been unleashed onto the first corner. Saiful Arifin gets an early lead. Jasmine Jelly is going around trying to go around the outside, but fails. Irshad is having a watching brief, right back in third position. And Saiful looks like he really got that fantastic start off the line there. He's definitely got the tire temps just about right. They're still a little bit cold, but they're a little bit warmer than everyone else's. So that just gives you a slight grip advantage. But having said that, Jasmine Jelly is a lot closer to the apex on that final corner coming into the back straight. Saiful Arifin, they're trying to break the toe as a whole group of the cars on the back there. A real crowd coming into the top corner and into the infield section behind the pits. Shopian Said has dropped a position, but he'll try and fight back, try and overtake the cars in front. But he's also going to watch out for the guys behind. Muhaimin, Ha, and Hazim are really looking to try and make an overtaking maneuver work. So Muhaimin is really trying to fill up the mirrors of Shopian as much as possible. Sometimes these drivers like to take a little different line just to remind the guy in front that they're there, especially when they're that close to each other. That could be some pretty interesting stuff coming into the first corner on the next lap. Meanwhile, Michael Hafiz is down in 12th position, which is where he started. Ooh, he's gone sideways. That's a big incident. He got the car on the grass, and the rear end just came out from underneath him, and off he went into the wall. Movinderjit Singh in 9th position there, battling away. Shopian Muhaimin still battling very hard. Up ahead there, Malvinderjit also getting very close to each other. Shopian side just about manages to keep everything going, but it looks like Calvin Ha is going to go for the overtaking maneuver from Muhaimin. Muhaimin lost out when trying to go around the outside there, but Shopian managed to close the door. And now Shopian goes on the inside, Ha goes around on the outside, but Muhaimin is coming into the inside as well. It looks like it's going to be another position change for these guys coming down into this downhill right-hander further down the field. As you can see there, Muhaimin and Ha really trying to defend from each other. The car's getting really squirrely in the brakes. These cars, you can get really deep into the brakes in these cars, but if you do overdo it, you can see the cars lose traction, lose control, and there's one car off the road there, that's Zainal Hazim, who's fallen off the road. It looks like he just got the car sideways coming off the track, and there he is, having to rejoin right at the back of the field. But it looks like Mohammed Mohamed is still on the tail of Calvin Ha, pushing as hard as he can. For those of you who are wondering, Calvin Ha in the 778 Autosport car, that car has a livery that is basically based on the China touring car Kia Forte. So that's a car that they raced down in China. 778 Autosport is a Hong Kong racing team which races both in China and in Malaysia. Very well known touring car team, one of the quickest around. They also make the odd appearance in Macau for the Gia race as well. But if you're wondering, that's why Calvin's car looks a lot different this year than last. This is because this is the 778 Kia Forte livery. It looks like they've done an absolutely fantastic job on that car's livery. It looks very close to the original real-life ones. Meanwhile, he's chasing another man running with a new livery, Shopian side, with that very gamer-inspired livery, Dirty Air. I guess the Dirty Air racing car. And it's nice to see the creativity come out of these guys, but Shopian side definitely will not be worried too much about the creativity. He's been more worried about trying to get past that red car ahead of him, and also trying to keep a watching brief to the car behind. Meanwhile, Saiful Arifin is still in the lead from Jazri Dali, and Tengku Irshad is in third position, followed by Jai Ha, Shopian, Mohaimin, Malvinajid, Aswil, Lloyd, Khalif, Azim, Alang, Shukran, Paduka, and Michael. So it looks like Michael's managed to get past Paduka right at the bottom there, but meanwhile everyone else is still in the same position. It's a 15-minute race. We are 5 minutes through it, so there's 10 minutes left, and we're going to say there's going to be about another 10. It'll get to about lap 10 or lap 12. Sorry, lap 12 or lap 14. My calculator needs new batteries, I do apologize. Okay, Tengku Irshad there in third position. He's close enough now that if any of the front runners up ahead make a mistake, he could very well end up with the lead. But he's also being very smart, trying to not rush everything, just putting on the pressure and sitting back and watching at a safe distance. He's still got time, not a lot of time, but he still has some in order to make his move. But he is getting closer and closer to Jazrin Jali as the laps wear on. Safar Efin still has that 7/10 of a second lead. It hasn't really changed since the start of the race. He had a fantastic start and a fantastic first few corners there, but Jazrin Irshad started to close the gap. And as you can see there, the Dante's car of Tengku Irshad, he's still in the third position. They're all holding brief, but it looks like the slipstream effect is just about coming in to play now. The cars are starting to concertina up a little bit at the end of the stretch. It looks like these cars you do tend to need to be slightly closer in order to have that slipstream effect work compared to the MX-5. Of course, the MX-5 is such a small car. It doesn't really create much of a wake, but it doesn't need much of a wake as well to have the slipstream effect work. Meanwhile, Mohammed Mohaimin is still in the battle up there, up ahead of these guys, Azrael Nasri and Lloyd Lachlan. They are battling it out, front and back. It looks like Azrael Nasri is going to try and make a move down on Mavinajit, but Lloyd Lachlan and Paduka have an incident behind there. So it looks like Lloyd and Paduka both went off the road at the same time. I'm not too sure what's happening there, but meanwhile, Azil Nazli is a place behind where he started. He'll want to try and gain that position again, and he's got Mavinajit directly ahead of him. battle for 7th and 8th position. Well, Muhammad has definitely gone quite far down the road, but Azrael Nazli is very close to the back of Melvin, as he's known to his buddies down in the SRE community. He's a well-known driver, very, very experienced when it comes to driving around, especially with these sort of cars. Azrael Nazli also very, very experienced. In fact, he is a bit of a driving instructor par excellence. And we can see these two guys really pushing hard to try and get those positions back. Meanwhile, Muhammad Muhaimin has Shopian right ahead of him to try and make an overtaking maneuver work. He's 0.3 of a second behind. This might be it. If he can pull off these corners as neatly and as well as possible, he'll be able to go for that overtaking maneuver at the end of the back stretch into the hairpin. Calvin Ha, meanwhile, is putting a lot of pressure on Afizul Jai, our round 5 race winner there. Really trying to maintain the speed as much as possible, trying not to worry too much about the car behind, but he's got one eye in the mirror and one eye on the road ahead. And he's really got to worry quite a bit because Calvin Ha is looking into the inside. He's deciding not to go for the overtaking maneuver, but it looks like Afizul Jai just got pressured into a mistake, and that's Calvin Ha through quite easily. Afizul looked like he just oversped a little bit, and now Calvin Ha makes a mistake and goes a little bit too quick off into the gravel trap, and that is going to reduce the speed coming into this straight here. And you can see how fast Afizul Jai can catch up to Calvin Ha, to the rear of Calvin Ha's car. That mistake has really cost him dearly, and now Afizul is going to be close enough to try and make an overtaking maneuver work on the main stretch. If he can get these two corners down and dusted, it's not over yet for Calvin Ha. He's in 4th position. He's in a very nice position if he can hold it. And now he's trying to break that toe. That's why the drivers will move on to the inside of the track on the start finish straight. You'll see it happen in the back straight as well occasionally. Calvin Ha now has managed to complete the lap in 4th position, so that's an improvement. That means he's gone up 2 places, but now Afizul Jai is really looking very feisty behind there, and of course we can't forget Shopian. He's right behind as well. These two guys are battling, and that means Shopian is able to catch up, because when you're battling you do tend to lose a little bit of time. And Calvin has gone wide. He's gone very wide indeed, and it looks like Afizul Jai and Shopian has managed to make an overtaking maneuver. That is sensational stuff. That is a big mistake from Calvin Ha, who's really going to be ruining that. He was in 4th position, now he's down into 6th. We know he has the pace to try and catch up with the 2 drivers up ahead, but it looks like Calvin Ha came off a little bit worse. A slight mistake going onto that back stretch, and it's put him quite far behind and into the clutches of Muhammad Muhaimin, who's right behind him in the Donut Motorsports car. And he's going to be really careful about that, but it looks like Muhaimin has problems. He's pulling off the track. It looks like he has a mechanical of some sort. And that looks like game over for Muhammad Muhaimin. It's really quite sad indeed. But right now we're coming into the last 4 minutes or so of the race. Shopian Saeed is still fighting with Afizul Jai to try and gain that position back. He's 2 positions down. Jai has managed to stay in the same position he has started the race in. Meanwhile, Tinku Irshad is really pushing quite hard. Jezrin Jali is really throwing the car around. Now he's trying to use that as much of the tyre as possible. He knows he can push to the end on the tyres. Tinku Irshad is still maintaining a watching brief. They're going to try and really give each other as much pressure as possible. Tinku Irshad there in 3rd position, nice and calm and cool and collected. He's a little bit behind. 0.6 of a second ahead is Jezrin Jali, who's only half a second ahead of behind Saiful, and it looks like Saiful Arifin has made a mistake. Saiful has gone wide, and now they're going side by side into the second part of the back complex here, and it looks like Saiful Arifin still manages to hang on to the lead, but only just. Saiful Arifin looks like he outbraked himself coming into that final corner, and it looks like he's done it again. He's gone a little bit too wide. He can't quite make the apex of the corners now. It looks like he may have tortured those front tyres quite a bit. You have to remember these cars are front wheel drive, so real touring car territory here. 2-litre turbocharged engines, the 6-speed sequential X-Track gearbox. Car puts out about 375 brake horsepower, about 400 newton meters of torque, so you really have to be concentrating very hard to try and get the most out of these cars. In the meantime, we have the battle for the lead up ahead and the battle for 4th, 5th and 6th, which looks like it's sort of getting close to being settled between Afizul Jai, Sopian Said and Calvin Ha. Looks like they finally get into a bit of a rhythm. It's going to be a real tall order for Sopian to try and catch Jai Bluebird, as he's known to his friends. A bit of a character on the real life drifting scene. Absolutely fantastic guy, real showman. Meanwhile, Azranazi is still fighting Muhammad Khalif, and it looks like Malvindijit has gone off the road as well. So I was just about to say he's putting a lot of pressure on Malvindijit, who was also part of that battle, but it looks like Muhammad Khalif, Azranazi has managed to put a bit of gap to Muhammad Khalif, and it looks like Malvindijit has dropped down into 10th position. So that's a big win for Azranazi. Shopian is still pushing hard to try and gain some positions, some pace to the front of the field, with only 30 seconds or so left on the clock. It looks like this may be the final lap. So yeah, I was right the first time around. It was about 10 to 12 laps. I think I need to go back to those Kumon classes rather. Meanwhile, Tuku Irshad is now done with waiting. He knows he's on the final lap of the race. He's pushing as hard as he can to try and catch up to Jezrin Jali. Saiful Arifin has managed to pull a slight lead up ahead, but he's got to make sure that he has to keep the car in a safe place. He doesn't want to do any dramatic mistakes. He still has to push quite hard to try and get the car to the finish of the race. Meanwhile, Jezrin Jali is pushing as hard as he can to try and run away from Tuku Irshad. So that's your leader right now, Saiful Arifin. Behind him, Jezrin Jali, who seems to have a lot more straight line speed, but look at Tuku Irshad there. He's getting closer and closer to the back of that car. You've got to be very careful now coming to this complex of corners, and it looks like Tuku Irshad can really get close to Jezrin's car. Saiful Arifin seems to have the pace going through the infield section here, but look how close Tuku Irshad can get to Jezrin's car. Irshad really pushing the car hard now, back down through the gearbox, down to about 80 kilometers an hour would be the perfect speed through that corner, about 65, 70 through here, and then over 100 through the next couple of corners. In fact, 140 briefly there for Tuku Irshad. Now they're coming down into the final corner. Saiful Arifin is going to take the first heat victory as he runs up across the line. Tuku Irshad goes for a look, but it looks like the order is settled. First, second and third. Saiful Arifin is first, Jezrin Jali is second, Tuku Irshad is third. Afizul Jai manages to keep the crowd behind him in fourth, followed by Shopian, and Calvin Ha manages to bring that car in sixth, home in sixth position. Azranazi is seventh. Muhammad Khalif is there in eighth, still battling with Hazim, and it looks like they finish in that order as well, with Malvindijit Singh managing to bring the car home in 10th position. Muhammad Shukran there, he had a little bit of problems earlier on in the race. Now still on the lead lap, trying to bring that car home in 11th, and it looks to me like we have our grid set for the reverse grid feature race. This is going to be absolutely exciting stuff up ahead. So that's Shukran up in 11th position, and Faiza Alang in 12th, with Michael Hafiz there in the background finishing in 13th position and last of the runners. So that was our first practice race for AIMC Season 2 pre-season testing. It looks to be that these Kias are definitely capable of putting on an entertaining race. So Paducah
What
manages
happened to
to get the
Paducah?
car. He was in the pits. I believe he just had to repair his car, and looks like he had to get back on there.
So
So that
Jasri
was
is not round, I think. So there will be an empty P1 slot there.
so it looks like Lloyd Lachlan will be on pole position, followed by Paducah, Mohaimin, and Michael. Saifur Ifin will start from the very back of the grid, alongside Jasmine Jelly and Tunku Irshad. So that's going to be a very interesting race indeed for all the drivers. So we see the Porsche 911 safety car getting ready to go underway here at Okayama. They're gridding up right at the back in the infield section, just behind the pits. As you can see there, I usually try and find some interesting tidbits and facts about racetracks we go to, but the only one I can still remember is that Okayama is infamously the other Formula One racetrack. And now is home to a lot of domestic racing series, as well as a general slow return back into the international spotlight with regional racing series coming down here, and some TCR car racing as well. But also, let's not forget Super GT, which is a popular fixture here in Okayama. And yeah, it's slowly starting to get its popularity back again. It's a little bit tricky for the fans to get there because it's about 2 hours away from the nearest population center, but still, it is a very special kind of track for Japan. As we watch Paducah Shoaib lead the field away. The lights are red, they're starting to spread out there, and it's a green flag from the starter, and Paducah Shoaib is coming into first position. Faisal Alang follows him into second, and it looks like Faisal Alang has gone off. It looks like quite a few cars there have gone into a bit of an incident there. We've got a 20-minute feature race, and it looks like all sorts of cars are off the road. Jasmine Jali, who's involved in that as well. It looks like Lloyd Lachlan was involved, Azunazi was involved, and Muhammad Mohaimin. So that's 4 cars out of the race immediately, right in the first corner there. And that is pretty dramatic stuff indeed. But Paducah leads from Afizul Jai. Mavilnajit is in third position. Calvin Half fourth, followed by Shukran, Maichil, Sopian, Alang, Saifur Ifin, Jasmine Jali, who are both drivers still managing to keep the cars running. Zainul Hazim and Tunku Irshad right in the back of the field. That's a dramatic first corner incident there. We saw Faisal Alang slide off the road and into the gravel track. He's obviously been hit by someone, which caused the initial incident. Luckily, Alang is back up and running again, and now up to 8th position. Jasmine Jali is in 9th and chasing Alang very, very hard indeed to try and make that overtaking maneuver work. Meanwhile, we're watching Mavidajit Singh defend from Calvin Ha. Melvin really trying to push that car as hard as he can to try and make up some sort of gap, but Calvin's right behind him there in the 778 Autosport Kia, and it looks like Calvin's got some problems. He's going off the track there. Seems all over the road there for a second.
I think he's still eating his McDonald's from yesterday.
Yeah. If you've not watched that stream from yesterday, I highly recommend you do so. That was probably one of the most entertaining things we've ever done here on Adrenaline Impact. I couldn't stop laughing. Half the field couldn't stop laughing, and I don't think what you couldn't really call it a race. It was more like a destruction derby on one of the strangest tracks in iRacing. So do go and have a look at that if you've got the time after this. But meanwhile, Saifur Arifin has managed to really push hard. In 2 laps, he's managed to gain 10 positions and is now right behind Michael Hafiz. He's up to 7th position. He started at the very back of the field, so he's really gained quite a lot of paces. Quite a few of them were from incidents. We have 4 cars completely out of the race. Meanwhile, Saiforifin is really close to the rear of Michael. Michael there trying to defend, coming into the inside, but it looks like he's decided to give his teammate room to go through. And they're really playing the tactical game right now. Michael knows that he's probably not going to come off better in a battle with Saiforifin, so they're obviously communicating and working together as a team. They made that overtaking maneuver happen. That was a 2-man effort, if you will, just so that Saiforifin can get onto the main straight and start chasing down Shukran. And when Shukran is really trying to push as hard as he can, meanwhile, Calvin Ha is right on the tail of the leading group. All 4 cars are very, very close to each other, and they're all going to try and push as hard as they can in order to make this race stick. Calvin Ha only 0.4 of a second behind Jai, who is only 0.2 of a second behind Vindijit. Jai goes for a look into the inside, but it doesn't work. Shukran, meanwhile, has been overtaken by Saiforifin, so Saiful has got a 3-second gap to try and close up to the leading group. He can see them up ahead on the road there, but he's also got to watch out for Shukran behind and Michael as well. Mohammad Shukran is steadily being closed on by Michael. Michael definitely in his element a lot more in these sort of cars than the MX-5 and the first season. He's a bit of a K-car expert and an all-round front-wheel drive exponent in touring car racing, so give him a front-wheel drive touring car, just like in real life, he really knows how to get those sort of cars turned in and working quite well indeed. Meanwhile, Calvin Ha is slowly losing touch on the cars at the very front, but he's still battling with Afizul Jai. Melvin is really fighting very hard to try and get the lead from Paducah right at the start. Looks like we're going to have a lead change coming into the first corner. Paducah is trying to defend on the inside, but Melvin is going to go even more on the inside. That's going to be a sensational maneuver from Melvin Ajit Singh, but he's been punted off the road, and now it's 3 wide going into turn 2, and it looks like Paducah manages to keep that position. That was insane racing. Melvin has slid right down the order, and it looks like Paducah has managed to get through with Afizul Jai in second and Calvin Ha in third, so that's a real loss for Vindijit. It looks like he managed to make the move work, but unfortunately just got bumped into the grass a little bit there, and fortunately he's got his work cut out for him again. But Paducah has now managed to stretch his lead up to a second. Meanwhile, Calvin Ha is going to try and go for the overtaking maneuver on Afizul Jai, but Calvin clips the grass, and that means Jai manages to make the switchback work, and keeps his position. Meanwhile, he's really got to watch out because Melvin is right behind him, so Calvin has to really work hard now to try and make sure he doesn't get overtaken by Melvin. And Melvin himself has to work quite hard to not only try and attack Afizul Jai, but he's got Melvindijit has got to work really hard to try and catch Calvin Ha, and he's got Saiforifin right behind him, so it's all chaos right at the front of the field. Paducah has managed to really open up the gap. That is 0.3 of a second that he's gained lap on Afizul Jai. Now up to 1.5 seconds gap between first and second place, but Calvin Ha, he's really got the entire world behind him, really looking for an overtaking maneuver. And Kelvin's really got to try and put Afizul Jai between himself and the cars behind. Melvin is definitely very, very quick driver, but look at Saiforifin, a Schumacher-esque performance to try and get his car from the back of the field right up to the front here, and he is within striking range. Kelvin there defending from Melvin. Melvin managing to get the bump on him. Now Saiforifin, he's going to go and get the toe coming down into the backstretch here. He's got to watch out with the braking zone coming up here. Saiful decides not to try anything too drastic. Meanwhile, Melvin is trying something a little bit drastic. He gets into all sorts of bother coming out of that hairpin now into the infield section. Afizul is really in trouble, and Melvin looks like he hasn't got that much grip. We're barely at the halfway mark, ladies and gentlemen, and they're racing like it's the last lap of the race. This is absolutely fantastic racing all up through the field. Safar Effin, meanwhile, is still glued to the back of the car ahead of him. Kelvin Ha is still trying to make the overtaking maneuver on Afizul Jai work. Meanwhile, Paducah is definitely stretching his lead up ahead there quite well indeed. Just goes to show our steward can drive, and he can drive very well indeed. So, well held there. Meanwhile, Kelvin Ha is still laying on the pressure. There's only 0.2 of a second between Kelvin Ha and Afizul Jai. That's less than a blink of an eye. You can see how close these two drivers are. And also Kelvin is trying to maximize his speed through the corners there by taking a wide line. Afizul Jai really only has one option to try and defend, and that's to try and park his car on the apex of the corner, try and force Kelvin to go around the outside there. You can see his very defensive driving. But Kelvin there, he's gone a little bit wide, and that may give Melvin a bit of a speed advantage going down the back straight here to try and make the overtaking maneuver work. These cars are still very close to each other. Saifur Effin is also desperate to try and get past this group, this battle, in order to try and catch Paducah Shoaib. He started at the very back of the field. We know he's very, very quick indeed, so he's trying his hardest to try and get through the pack, but the battle up ahead isn't making it easy for Saifur Effin. He's going to have to push quite hard indeed to try and make that overtaking maneuver work on Melvin. But Melvin doing a very good job both defending and attacking at the same time. We're coming up to the halfway point of the race. It looks like we'll have a 12-lap race if the pace stays the same. We have a 20-minute feature race there. We're almost at the 10-minute mark. And we really got a lot of budging and fighting there between Melvinajit and Kelvin Ha. Saifur Effin is trying to maintain the toe as much as possible. Both drivers try and break the toe. Melvin tries to go for an overtaking maneuver, but he gets blindsided by Saifur Effin, who's trying to go around the outside. Will Saifur be able to make it work? No. Melvin is just a little bit too quick through the first couple of corners there. Now coming up to this slight rise around the hill and on the run up to the back stretch. And it looks like Melvin is defending really aggressively there. Kelvin Ha has to go around the outside to try and give some room, and they're now going to go side by side down the back stretch into the hairpin. They've got to really watch themselves in the braking zone here. They're very close to each other. Melvin is only 1/10 of a second. He's going to go for the overtaking maneuver, and they touch. Melvin and Kelvin have touched, and it looks like Melvin's going to give that position back, which is very sporting of him. Kelvin Hart did well to try and keep that car in a straight line. As you can see, he laid on the throttle and lit the front wheels up to try and straighten the car out, and it worked for Kelvin Hart. But now Melvin is under a lot of pressure from Saifur Effin, who nearly gets the door closed on him. Kelvin Hart has now, despite being involved in that incident, it's Melvin that is come off a little bit worse. He is now so close to Saifur, it's getting really uncomfortable. I wouldn't want to be in that car with him. He's sweating buckets. You can see Saifur Effin really behind him. Very much a frightening sight there, but Saiful's made a mistake. So now Saiful has dropped down a little bit, and Melvinajit has managed to catch back up to Kelvin Haas. Let's see if they can resume the battle they had from the previous lap. Both cars run wide. Saiful decides not to go for the double overtake, which is a very wise option through there, but it looks like Melvin's car is starting to slide out wide a little bit more. Looks like his tires are starting to get a little bit perhaps overheated. Meanwhile, Kelvin Ha is up ahead. There is nothing between these three cars, and of course this is all helping Paducah Shoaib and Afizul Jai get away in the front. They can see them opening up the gap because they are definitely driving away from the battle. See Afizul Jai through there, and the more those three cars behind Kelvin Ha, Melvinajit Singh and Saifur Effin, the more these guys battle out the slower their lap times become. So they've got to really worry about that. And I know Saiful Arifin will be really worried about this because he will want to get past these 3 cars and try and put some pass laps in clean air between himself and the battle. But it looks like Melvin is trying to go for the overtaking maneuver on Kelvin Ha. It goes into the inside. That becomes the outside for this corner. And it looks like Melvin has to pull out of that. Saiful Arifin is trying to line himself up to try and make an overtaking maneuver stick. And Melvin really pushing the car very hard indeed. He got the car really crossed up through there. Meanwhile, Kelvin Ha goes out wide and Saiful Arifin follows him. And now there is nowhere for Saiful to go. Melvin is trying to make the overtaking maneuver work, going through the inside of the corner. And it looks like there's going to be another impact. And Melvin manages to make the overtaking maneuver stick. Saiful Arifin tapped the back of Kelvin Ha's car, and that was another big overtaking slide from Kelvin. Kelvin must be wondering what he did wrong to deserve all of these taps and impacts. He's done very well for himself to try and save it from certain accident twice there. So that's a fantastic car control from Kelvin Ha, but that means Melvindijit has managed to make that overtaking maneuver work. So now Melvin is off into the lead and Saiful Arifin is trying to make that run work. But it looks like Kelvin Ha has a little bit of a netcode issue, is blinking in and out a little bit, but he's trying to make a move on Melvindijit, who's now up in 3rd position. Kelvin Ha is in 4th, Saiful Arifin is in 5th. Kelvin Ha tries to overtake, and there's a big impact there. Saiful Arifin has been hit. Tried to go side by side with Kelvin Ha, and that didn't work out too well for him. Let's look at the replay. He goes around. Kelvin Ha was on the outside, Saiful Arifin was on the inside. It looks like Saiful Arifin just ran out wide. Perhaps he understeered a little bit and he just ran into Kelvin Ha. So that is very unfortunate indeed. Afizul Jai there in 2nd position. He is sitting pretty. You can see Paduka up there in the lead. And that looks like Saiful Arifin will have to head into the pits at the very least, if not retire from the race. We're into the 15 minutes of this 20-minute feature race. So there's another 5 laps to go, and basically for the whole race the battle for 3rd position has been very hot indeed. Now, one of the 3 drivers that have been battling it out for the final step on the podium has gone out. There's an impact between him and Kelvin Ha, and Melvin has gone off the road. He went out wide, and that looks like that's another one that bites the dust almost literally. And Kelvin Ha manages to take that 3rd position back. So that's Kelvin Ha from Melvindijit, and Shukran is well down the road, and it looks like they've managed to sort themselves out. Meanwhile, Michael and Hazim are still battling out behind. Michael Hafiz has to really defend hard from Hazim to try and make sure that he doesn't get passed through there. And it looks like Michael Hafiz is going through into the infield section there. Of course, Michael, more of a front-wheel drive expert than a rear-wheel drive expert when it comes to MSF racing and racing Sepang circuit in real life. So he struggled a little bit in the MX-5 cars, but it looks like this sort of car, this type of car, will be a little bit more to his liking. Will be a little bit more used to the characteristics of a front-wheel drive car going through the course here. Especially on a track like this, you can really throw the car into the corners there. He'd be quite happy with that. And of course, with him snagging Saiful Arifin as a teammate for next season, hopefully that deal goes through. He'll be very happy with that indeed. So it looks like Michael is now beginning to close in on Shukran, but he has to watch out for Zainal Hazim, who's right behind him. See, Hazim has a little bit of damage on his cars. But Zainal's still making that car work. He's only 0.2 of a second behind Michael. Michael's going to really watch out coming up to the hairpin up ahead here. Got to really get that braking point just about right. Climbs up the hill. And you can see Shukran has gone really wide. Now Michael's going to be a little bit nervous there because there's 2 teammates, one ahead of him and one behind him. Will they be able to make some sort of teammate work? Those three drivers are all in a line with only Michael being the odd one out. And he's trying really hard to try and make it work, but he has to go wide. Hazim had a real hard time trying to brake for the corner there. And Tigui Izzard manages to get past, but he's virtually sent Michael off the road there. And it looks like the three team... it looks like it's going to be a team finish for these guys with 2 minutes left to go, but they're still battling. Tigui Izzard is trying to make that overtaking maneuver work around Zainul Hazim. And it looks like it's going to be formation finish for these guys. Meanwhile, Paducah Shoaib is well in the lead. Afizul Jai is in second place. Calvin Ha is in third, with Malvinajit now finally catching up to Kelvin. They still have a battle to wage. With 1.5 minutes still to go, can Melvin do anything about Calvin Ha? So these two guys have been absolutely entertaining right throughout the race. And it looks like Zainul Hazim has a problem. He's dropped down, but not too sure about that. Meanwhile, Calvin Ha has to really push hard to try and make sure he keeps ahead of Malvinajit Singh here. And it looks like it might be lap 12 or even a 13th lap. We're not too sure. We'll have a look at the position of Paducah coming across the line, but they're very, very close to the white flag lap, if not the checkered flag. And Michael Hafiz is back up into 6th position. He's just gone past Shukran there, and Jazrin Jali has made an overtaking maneuver work on Shukran. Michael Hafiz is trying to get back up into the field. He's back into 6th position. He's managed to get past Shukran, and he's got Jazrin Jali behind him as well. So Jazrin, another driver who's quite experienced around the track. Michael Hafiz managing to get that into place. Looks like we're going to have another lap. Paducah has gone past the start-finish straight before the time is up, so now we're into the white flag lap. This will be the final lap for these guys. Malvinajit Singh is now trying to go for an overtaking maneuver on Calvin Ha. Desperation may set in at this point. Melvin is very, very close to the back of Calvin Ha there. He's going to be really careful coming up into these S's. The guy who can drive his car the quickest through these S's will be the man that gets the position coming out of this hairpin here, because they get closer and closer or further apart. It's all about the gap in between to try and get themselves into a winning position once they get down through the bottom of this hill. Coming to this hairpin, this is a big overtaking maneuver. It's going to be very hard to overtake elsewhere on the track. Can Melvin do anything? He decides not to go for it. And it looks like Calvin Ha manages to get wide. Both drivers are now side by side, but Calvin manages to keep that position. Melvin's going to push as hard as he can to try and make that work. Coming into the infield section, he's got one more braking point really to try and make this happen. He looks into the inside, manages to get a little bit closer to the apex, but Calvin Ha manages to block him off and get yet even more closer to the apex. But Melvin there and Kelvin going through the penultimate corner. It looks like Paducah Shoaib is going to get the win from Afizul Jai. So congratulations to Paducah there, who's managed to make the win work. Afizul Jai comes in 2nd position, and it looks like Melvin and Kelvin are going to be very close to each other. Melvin goes for the overtaking maneuver. Did he do it in time? No, he did not. He did not. Calvin Ha managed to get past Malvinajit, and looks like Michael Hafiz has got another battle on his head. Did he get past? Yes, he manages to keep the position from Jazrin Jali, and he throws the car into the gravel trap. That is just about as much as he can do there as he gets taken down by one of the other cars there. So the Dante's guys were trying to do a formation finish, I noticed, but Saifur Ifin, he comes in 10th position. A little bit disappointing for him. He got held up by the battle, and unfortunately he couldn't find a way past, and eventually ended up in an accident himself. Faisal Alang is still battling with Shopian Suid. They're going to go across the line. Shopian's going to try and go for the overtaking maneuver again. Very close finishes through there, and Faisal Alang gets sent into outer space. Good thing that was right after the finish line. And
Who was that?
it looks like that was Faisal Alang and Sofian battling, and it looked like it was another Auto House car that met them in the middle. And it's Paduka. Paduka has won the race there, so now he can speak with even more authority when he hands out those penalties. Yeah, the old joke that the race steward can't drive. Well, trust me, ours can. Paduka Shoaib has won our pre-season practice race from Afizul Jai and Calvin Ha. Afizul Jai has had quite a good run of results throughout here. Movinajit, a little bit down on his luck. He finished 4th. He almost had it. Just inches between Movinajit and Calvin Ha. That was very exciting indeed. And Tunku Irshad there down in 5th. And there we have Macha Hafiz, who, as usual, has managed to get his steering really out of line there. This man probably is perhaps the cause of and solution to most accidents that we have up and down the field. So that was the Kia Optimas that we're going to be using for the next season. They do tend to have some very interesting accidents as well. As they're slowly crawling towards the finish of the race there. And we're going to be going to some new racetracks as well. These cars are really suited to the big tracks. That's why we had a little run through here. But anyways, let's have a look at the future race
I'm just
results.
testing out these results.
Yep. So another sneak peek for a new format for next season. A little bit clearer results there. As you can see, the guys are definitely testing the limits of the Kia's bodywork. But yeah, special shout out to Calvin Ha. He's running delivery on a car he's actually worked on. So that's the China Touring Car Championship Kia Forte.
Okay, I think we better wrap this up. It's quite been a tiring day for me and maybe for you too.
Oh yeah, that as well. All that's left for me to say is to thank our sponsors: Works Engineering, Lucas Oil, Oregon Engineering, Stream.my, Simology, Pico Media, Sim Racing Enthusiasts, Toad Motorsports, and Interformula. We'll tell Paduka to get his car out of the fence. There we go. And we will just going to thank Carlo Alang, our director. Myself, I've been Matt Palmer. Do stay tuned on Friday. We have free practice 1 for the final round of the AIMC Season 1 with the MX-5 cars, and on Sunday the servers open at 9 p.m. and the qualifying and the race will start at 10 o'clock. So do stay tuned to Adrenaline Impact for what is shaping up to be a very exciting end to the first season of the Adrenaline Impact iRacing Malaysia Championship. But that's it from Carlo Alang and myself, Matthew Palmer. We will see you all in the next broadcast. Ta-ra!